We have crooked, corrupt elections.
Here's what I would say to you.
And I've proven it.
Here's what I would say to you. I believe it was a free and fair election and that you lost.
You do really believe that?
That's my belief.
All right. Well, then you're a fool.
However,
then you're a fool.
Maybe I am the fool. Maybe I'm the fool in this conversation.
And you're a fool and you haven't studied it.
The cameras rolled as Piers Morgan sat across from Donald Trump in what was supposed to be a routine interview. But from the moment the conversation began, it was clear this was going to be anything but ordinary. The tension in the room was thick, an invisible force hanging between the two men as they locked eyes. Trump, ever the showman, leaned back in his chair with his usual confidence, expecting to control the narrative as he had done countless times before. But Piers wasn't here to let him off easy. From the very first question, the interview took a sharp turn. Piers was direct, pressing Trump on his repeated claims of election fraud. He pointed out the dozens of court cases that had been thrown out, the statements from Trump's own former allies dismissing the claims, the overwhelming evidence that contradicted his narrative. Trump's expression shifted as he dismissed the concerns, falling back on familiar lines about rigged systems and corrupt institutions. But Piers didn't back down. He leaned in, pushing harder, refusing to let the vague responses slide. He brought up Trump's own administration officials who had publicly stated there was no widespread fraud. He referenced conservative figures who had begun distancing themselves from Trump's claims, highlighting how even longtime supporters were questioning his version of events.
That's it.
No, yeah. No, I realize that. I realize that I'm not lying.
Very dissent.
I just haven't asked you
You're
about that.
very dissent. This was a 20-minute interview.
Oh, sorry.
Listen, this was a 20-minute interview.
Don't you think? Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Turn the camera off.
With each remark, Trump's frustration became more apparent. His usual bravado flickered for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward, speaking more aggressively, attempting to reclaim control of the exchange. Just a quick interjection. If you're enjoying this kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us tremendously in bringing you more of these deep dives, viral moments, and must-watch takedowns. Plus, you'll never miss a beat when the next big story drops. Thanks for the support, and now back to the action. The conversation moved from the election to Trump's legacy. Piers wasted no time in pointing out the contradictions, asking whether Trump's influence was fading as other figures in the conservative movement stepped into the spotlight. He questioned whether Trump was still the dominant force in politics or if his grip on the movement was beginning to slip.
Just clarify for me what you would do. If you were president of the United States tomorrow, what would you do and what would you tell countries in Europe to do to combat ISIS?
I would hit ISIS so hard you wouldn't believe it, and I'd get the people over there to put up their soldiers because it's about time that somebody did it. But I'd have such backup like you've never seen before in terms of air power, airstrikes, etc. And you've got to take them out, and you've got to take them out harshly, and you've got to take them out fast. And you have no choice.
Trump, visibly irritated, dismissed the idea, claiming his supporters remained stronger than ever. But then came the moment that broke the internet. Piers, with a calm and deliberate tone, asked the question that Trump couldn't easily escape. If the system had been corrupt when he lost in 2020, then why wasn't it corrupt when he won in 2016? The question hung in the air. Trump, for a brief second, hesitated. It was a rare pause, the kind of moment that doesn't go unnoticed. His usual deflections didn't come as quickly. He shifted in his seat, his frustration evident. And then, Piers did something that set the internet ablaze. He laughed. It wasn't a loud, exaggerated laugh, but a small, knowing chuckle. The kind that comes from someone who knows they've won the exchange. Trump's expression hardened. His posture stiffened. For a moment, it looked like he might end the interview right then and there. Within minutes, the clip began circulating online. Twitter exploded with reactions. Social media users dissected every second of the moment, pointing out how Trump had been caught off guard in a way rarely seen before.
What is your message to British Muslims who are law-abiding, who are not violent, and who are as horrified by what has been going on in Brussels and Paris, and indeed in London, as we are?
The hashtags trended almost immediately as memes flooded the internet. Some called it one of Trump's most embarrassing moments in recent memory. Others praised Piers for standing his ground and refusing to let Trump control the conversation. It wasn't long before Trump's team fired back.
Well, I say stay the course, and I have great respect for Muslims. I have many friends that are Muslims. I'm just saying there is something with a radicalized portion that is very, very bad and very dangerous. They're protecting each other, but they're really doing very bad damage. And they have to open up to society. They have to report the bad ones. And, you know, if you report the bad ones, all of a sudden you're not going to have the kind of problems.
A furious post appeared on True Social, blasting Piers as biased and calling the interview a setup. But the damage was already done. The clip had been replayed millions of times, analyzed on news networks, debated on talk shows, and turned into countless reaction videos. As the interview wrapped up, Piers remained composed. He delivered a final remark that summed up the entire exchange, one last reality check before the cameras cut off. Trump, still visibly frustrated, made a swift exit. The internet had already made up its mind. The moment was cemented as one of the most talked-about clashes in recent political interviews. The conversation wasn't over. Social media continued to dissect the fallout, debating whether Piers had been too aggressive or whether Trump had finally been confronted in a way he couldn't dismiss. Either way, the clip had already secured its place in viral history.
We have crooked, corrupt elections.
But here's what I would say to you.
And I've proven it.
Here's what I would say to you. I believe it was a free and fair election and that you lost.
You don't really believe that?
That's my belief.
All right, well, then you're a fool.
However,
then you're a fool.
Maybe I am a fool. Maybe I'm the fool in this conversation about
and
it.
you're a fool and you haven't studied it.
As the dust settled from the explosive interview, the internet continued to churn with reactions. News outlets picked up the story within the hour, with headlines ranging from Piers Morgan takes down Trump in brutal showdown to Trump left speechless after fiery confrontation with Piers Morgan. Every major network played the clip on repeat, analyzing every moment, every shift in posture, every break in Trump's usual unwavering confidence. Political commentators weighed in, some calling it a rare moment of accountability, others arguing that Morgan had gone too far. Conservative pundits scrambled to defend Trump, dismissing the exchange as nothing more than a hostile interview designed to trap him. But even among Trump's own base, there were murmurs of something different this time. The usual bravado wasn't as strong, the usual dominance wasn't as present. And then came the late-night reaction. Comedians wasted no time in turning the moment into viral monologues, playing the clip of Trump's hesitation, exaggerating the awkward pause, replaying Piers' smirk over and over. It was the kind of moment that sticks, the kind that lingers far beyond the initial headlines. Trump's team was in full damage control mode. More posts appeared on social media, each one attacking Morgan with increasing aggression. The former president's usual allies rushed to discredit the interview, calling it a setup, a hatchet job, a desperate attempt for ratings. But the problem wasn't just the interview itself. It was the fact that the clip had already become something bigger. It was no longer about what was said. It was about how it felt. And for many watching, it felt like the first time in a long time that Trump had been caught off guard. Piers Morgan, meanwhile, capitalized on the moment. Clips from the interview flooded his social media pages, racking up millions of views within hours. He teased more explosive moments from the full sit-down, promising his audience that this was only the beginning. And he wasn't wrong. Talk shows dissected every detail of the exchange. Body language experts broke down Trump's reactions, pointing out the subtle changes in his demeanor, the micro-expressions that betrayed frustration, the telltale signs of someone struggling to maintain control. Others pointed out how Piers had masterfully guided the conversation, never letting Trump steer away from the uncomfortable moments, never backing down when the usual deflections were thrown his way. It wasn't just about one interview anymore. It was about the bigger narrative, the question of whether Trump's dominance in political media was beginning to crack. As the days went on, the clip refused to fade. More reaction videos surfaced, some celebrating Morgan's approach, others criticizing him for grandstanding. The political world remained fixated on the moment, debating its implications, wondering whether this was a turning point or just another viral flash in the pan. For Trump, the fallout was unavoidable. Whether he ignored it or fought back, the moment had already embedded itself into the public consciousness. The internet had taken hold of it, and once that happened, there was no undoing it. And for Piers Morgan, it was a victory, one that solidified his reputation as one of the few interviewers willing to go toe-to-toe with Trump and walk away as the one in control. The conversation wasn't just about what happened in that room, it was about what it meant moving forward. Would Trump recover from yet another viral controversy? Or was this the moment that signaled a shift, a sign that the world was no longer as easily swayed by his usual tactics? The debate raged on. The clip continued to circulate. The headlines refused to die. One thing was clear, this was a moment no one would be forgetting anytime soon. As the days stretched on, the clip continued to dominate social media, news cycles, and political discussions. It was dissected in countless YouTube breakdowns, with commentators playing it frame by frame, analyzing Trump's shifting demeanor, Piers Morgan's unwavering persistence, and the exact second the tide of control shifted.
It happened. Donald Trump is president again. Hey, Melania Trump made a real statement with her look. That statement, I am Carmen Sandiego.
If you don't control your borders, Trump didn't actually put his hand on the Bible. Obviously, because one or the other would burst into flames.
Memes flooded the internet. One of the most viral showed a photoshopped Trump sitting in a sweating, nervous state while Piers leaned back smugly, arms crossed. Another replayed the awkward pause right before Piers laughed, but slowed down dramatically, making Trump's expression appear even more rattled. Satirical accounts posted mock headlines. Breaking, Trump demands election recount of interview after Piers Morgan. Totally rigged it. Donald Trump declares victory in interview he clearly lost. The moment had eclipsed the interview itself. It was no longer about just what had been said. It was about what it represented. Piers Morgan himself became the center of attention, appearing on talk shows and news segments to discuss the interview.
First things first, we're going to plant a flag on Mars and return Elon Musk to his home planet. That's what. And that's,
One day, Elon Musk could be the biggest dork on 2 planets.
When asked whether he thought Trump had been rattled, Piers smirked, choosing his words carefully but clearly enjoying the reaction. He repeated the line that had hit the hardest, that at some point, Trump had to face reality. The line that had made Trump pause. But in Trump's camp, the reaction was fierce. His advisors scrambled to shift the narrative, spinning the exchange as a hit job, a setup designed to embarrass him. In speeches following the interview, Trump made references to failing TV hosts desperate for ratings and implied that Morgan had manipulated the footage. He assured his audience that he had won the exchange, but the viral nature of the moment told a different story. Even some of Trump's staunchest supporters were forced to acknowledge the stumble. Conservative commentators debated whether Trump had lost his edge, with some arguing that he should focus less on past grievances and more on the future of his movement. Others doubled down, insisting that the media had once again twisted a narrative against him. But no amount of damage control could stop the internet from doing what it does best, keeping the moment alive. A week after the interview, view counts continued to climb, past tens of millions across different platforms. People who hadn't even been following Trump's latest moves were drawn into the moment, curious to see what had made the former president falter. Late-night comedians continued to pile on, with impersonators reenacting the interview, mimicking the exact body language and expressions that had become the defining image of the exchange. And yet, despite all of this, Trump refused to let it go. At one of his rallies, he brought up the interview again, calling Piers a total lightweight, claiming that the media had taken it out of context. His supporters cheered, but even in that moment, it was clear he wasn't moving past it. The moment had stuck. Piers, on the other hand, was already on to his next move. He capitalized on the attention, teasing more high-profile interviews, making it clear that this was just another chapter in his long career of taking on the biggest figures in the world. And the world watched, waiting to see if Trump would ever fully recover from one of his most uncharacteristic stumbles in years. The viral moment had become history, etched into the never-ending digital archive of political takedowns that no one would forget.